and thank you to CreativeMornings and Lisa and Carmen for inviting me. The theme, as she said, was curiosity. Thank you. I've put some things on the table, some curious things, and you'll understand more about them through the talk, but feel free to play with them as I talk about the 20 years of creating this result. So in that time, I've primarily worked in education, trying to show that children have this natural curiosity, this no fear of failing. They are innovative naturally, and in fact, through education, they lose that, right? Which is really sad. So I've spent a lot of time with teachers talking about these things, and every time in the past, the teachers would come up with this question as well, and that is, how do I, as an adult, become more creative and an innovative thinker? And every time I started talking to them about it, and I really didn't approach that subject very strongly because I was more interested in the children. But now, fast forward to today, and 3 companies and a divorce later, I am focusing on that question because I think it's actually really important that we not only explain that children are creative and we need to keep that, but also as adults, we still have it in us, this childhood curiosity. We just don't remember how to do it anymore. So my journey began in Helsinki, Finland. I'm actually American, but it began in Helsinki, which is strange, where I was doing my master's thesis in industrial design. And the topic of my thesis was on researching designing with children, like keeping them in the process before we give them the product. And it was called I Am the Space Where I Am. In 2000, I moved to Belgium, got married, and my first aha moment was, excitingly, in my first project, in the first year of my first company, which I don't know happens very often, but I was lucky in that. And it was a project called the Friendship Bench. I was invited by a school to design a friendship bench for their playground with the children, ages about 6 to 12. I went in super enthusiastically with lots of information, lots of facts, white paper and colored pencils, and I explained to the kids, we're going to put something on the playground, sky's the limit, we can do whatever we want, what shall we make? And after about 4 hours with these different groups of children, I came home with princesses, snakes, flowers, all these pictures and no words. And there was no way I could design anything from this. It was really not really a useless day, but it didn't give me any information. So the next week I collected a bunch of found objects from around my house, and I took them with me to the class. And I started with what I now call a good question. So instead of saying, what shall we make? I asked them, how do you know when 2 people are friends? This is a good question because it's hard to answer, and it makes you think, it makes you have an imagination to really consider this question and to talk to each other about it. That question through the day ended in what could we put on the playground to foster friendship. For instance, a teeter-totter, the kids decided, was definitely something that fostered friendship because you need 2 people. The children immediately dug into the material. I didn't have to even explain anything. They started building, they started using words like we want to go through, we want to go high, we want it to be soft, we need it to be safe. All of these things that I was just sitting there writing down as a designer going, okay, this is perfect, I can make something from this. What I didn't realize was actually by the end of the workshop, we had the designs. And not only, I didn't really have to do very much, we had 8 amazing prototypes from this workshop. And we, with the children, chose 3 of those. This is one of the 3, and in fact, the final winning design. And so here was the final project, the flying carpet, a friendship bench, which to most of us doesn't look like a bench or a flying carpet. but I can assure you to the children it was all of those things and more. So that was within my first company, which was called Turtle Wings, in 2007. But actually for 1 year it wasn't called Turtle Wings. My sort of genius idea was to call it The Turtle Dreams of Wind and Wings, which, you know, when you look back on it, simple is better. So this is a really long website address, and so I had to come up with a shorter one, and that's how it came to Turtle Wings. So Turtle Wings was a studio, a design studio, we called it, for adults and children. And it was really based on my thesis work of designing with children. And it became this test environment for many things, especially this idea of loose parts and working with objects. We had baskets and baskets and baskets of objects all around the space. It also became a place where I developed this idea of a good question. This image is from a project we did called My House, My Space, My School. And it was all about designing these kind of spaces. This was the Maker's Lab, and our question there was, what shape is a giraffe's house? This question, after 4 months, had children looking at shelters and safety and communities. You know, how does a lion live next to a lamb? What kind of wall do we need to build? Really interesting conversations. In 2010, our building was actually 650 square meters. We had a co-working space on the top and then Turtle Wings. And in the basement, we decided to go even one step farther, and we created a non-profit creative reuse center. This was in partnership with industry. So we went in and took their remnants, their scrap, unused, plastic, paper, wood, 300 left shoes for some reason, I don't know why. And we set it up in a shop-like atmosphere for teachers and creatives, not only to shop for the material, but to see ways of using it. And we had workshops also around using kind of trash, in fact, to make creative projects or to teach with. So early 2014, so Turtle Wings has been going for 7 years, Recircle for about 4. I'm in a space of 650 square meters. There's about 10 people in that space every day, and I'm surrounded with stuff, and it was just too much. It was all too much, and really wasn't making any money. So I had to kind of sit back and say, okay, this biggering, as Dr. Seuss says, it can't continue, I have to refocus. I do a lot of refocusing already by journaling and making lists and doing mind mapping. So actually, amazingly, I found this mind map for this talk, which was the one that I did in early 2014 to try to figure out what are all the things I'm doing and what from that are the things that I love and what are the things that bring in money or at least are sustainable. And there we were working with parents, we were doing birthdays, and we were working with museums, businesses, education, and creative people. And I really wanted to focus on the things that I love to do. And out of that came 2 things, which were I wanted to define and develop this idea of things in education. And I really wanted to reach more teachers all over the world, and not just the ones that could come in to my studio and see what was going on. Sort of at the same time, you know, your eyes are open, so you're looking around. I found a website called the Open Education Challenge, which was a competition to find the 7 best edtech startups in Europe, and then give them startup money and Accelerator and all of these things. It sounded wonderful. So I contacted a good friend of mine in the UK. He was a UX designer, and I said, I have this idea to build an app, almost like a cookbook, to teach with found objects. Do you want to submit it with me to this competition? Because you had to be 2 people, you couldn't be 1. So we did, and 4 months later we were deemed one of the best edtech start companies in Europe. But actually we weren't a company at all. We were the only one of the 7 that were just an idea. So we quickly set up shop in the UK because it costs £25 and takes like a week, where here, if any of you have a business, it's not the same at all. And we started in September 2014 this crazy accelerator where we traveled for 1 whole week at a time to 5 different countries. Sleepless nights. It was really intense. At the same time, I decided to close Turtle Wing Space and Recircle, which was necessary but incredibly hard because we had 7 years set up this space, this community, and we had a lot of families, a lot of children, and a lot of people working there that we were really close to. The 12 weeks turned into a year and never got less intense. We had investors meetings, we had exit strategies and wireframing, and it was amazing, but nothing to the idea of really this kind of grassroots idea of getting the things into education and reaching more teachers. Eventually, I guess it would, but I couldn't see that in all these spreadsheets. And in fact, the year ended in a failed Kickstarter, and our team pretty much imploding in October of 2015. And it was hard. I had already given up my Turtle Wing Space, and 1 year later, then Think With Things fails. I was actually also going through a divorce. And at the time, I couldn't look at anything positive about any of that. But now I look back and think that it all happened for a reason, and that in fact, that path, that tech startup path, was absolutely not the way that I wanted the things to go. So I took 2 years to sort of find myself, to regroup as a family of 4 with my 3 boys. I had actually kept many of my previous clients that I was designing learning environments for, so I just came back to that and kept those wonderful clients. And one of those clients, in fact, has now, this month, become my partner in the sort of relaunch of Think With Things, because in fact, I also never wanted it to die. I felt it just needed to sit for a little while. We had our launch of our business workshops last week at Transforma. And the exciting thing for me about these corporate workshops and this corporate direction is, although I always thought it might be, taking me too much away from education, now I can see that this addition will enable us to get to the teachers, because this side will sort of, financially sustain and allow us to do things with teachers and not ask them for money, or very much money anyway. But also, very excitingly, it's really needed in businesses. And I just wanted to share with you my very first corporate workshop I did, sort of in the transition between Turtle Wings and Think With Things. I was looking for some influx of money, so I put out some ideas of doing corporate play workshops. And the very first one I had was 5 businessmen, of which only one was happy to be there. He planned it. All of them were angry. They were angry before they entered the door, but actually when they entered the door and saw this, they were just furious. So I gave them a coffee, explained the day, and then I said, go for half an hour and play. Try to find that child in you that, what did you like to do, So eventually they all settled down. And about 25 minutes in, I went over to the block area, and this is exactly what it looked like. At the time, we were building tall structures with the children, trying to see how big we could get them. And these businessmen, 3 of them, were laying on the floor in their suits, working on this tower. And I went over, and I was like, we have about 5, we need more time. We're just about there, we're in the middle of this. And it was really exciting because they had completely lost themselves in this play. They've lost track of time. They were having fun. they were using all of their, information and knowledge that they had gained as adults to play. And it was really exciting, and this is one reason why now coming back to this idea of working with adults is really exciting for me. I would like to be able to tell you that I know exactly why this works, this idea of touching and using objects, but I actually don't really know. I've seen it work, so I do know it does. And through the years, I've asked many experts, especially during my Accelerator, when we had these experts available, why does this work? And the closest thing that we could come up with is a theory called embodied cognition. And this is a complex theory, but it's about the idea that not only does your mind influence your body, but perhaps also your body influences your mind. And the easiest example of this is to ask an Italian to put his hands in his pockets and explain something to you, because they can't explain it in the same way. They need their hands. And I think the same thing happens when you hold an object in your hand. And then when we suggest that you think with it, that you show your thinking and you build with it, a lot of rich information comes out. So if we go all the way back to that first question that adults were asking me many years ago, how do I personally become more of a creative and innovative thinker? I think there's lots of different ways. But for me, actually, through this time, I have 3 that I've picked for you today. And the first is this idea of a good question. It doesn't necessarily have to happen in your business. It also can happen at your table between friends. Consider what you're asking and see, and especially ask questions that have more than one right answer. Then the second one is to lose yourself in play. For me, that is with these objects, but it can also be in a sport or in dance or in singing. There's lots of ways to do this, but try to find something where when you're doing it, you lose track of time. And the last one is to be curious. If you have lost it, find it and use it every day. If you're not using it every day, do your best to. Thank you.